Alright, so here starts the video review. This is for you, Solo Polo 33. It's your game right here in the top. I'm going to use this site right here, League Spy, to kind of preface the game in general, because this site tends to bring up some really good and relevant stats that we can use going forward into the game. Looking at your runes going into the game, there's nothing wrong with them. This is like very standard, normal stuff. Even though Fleet Footwork got nerfed this patch, I would 100% still use it on somebody like Caitlyn, who is basically always going to go, IE into attack speed item first and have a crit IE build. This is just always going to be good. Even though it got nerfed, I would maybe start considering taking Press the Attack or Lethal Tempo in some different matchups, because this is going to be less dominant, but taking it as a default on a crit carry is still going to be core, I feel. Your build definitely goes off the rails as the game goes on, but we'll get into that further into the review. I've already watched the gameplay ahead of time, so that when I start recording this video and you're watching it now, it'll be much shorter, but a lot of the topics and points that I'm going to point out to you will be condensed, so you don't have to sift through like an hour-long video. Overall, a lot of what this points out is actually correct. Your CSing is pretty darn well, but it could be better. Your early game is okay, but it could be better. But definitely, your damage is low. You're far too timid, and I'll be able to point out where that happens. And you definitely die way too much. You definitely die way too much because this game is actually a 4v5 after Rise leaves at level 5. So I'm going to be able to show you how you just end a game like this. Whether it's a 4v5 or not, the same strategies of actually ending the game and playing Caitlyn correctly are going to apply in more scenarios. So I think that kind of covers most of it before we get in. Everything else I'll kind of show you with context. I think the main problems you said you were having with this game in general is that you felt like you had a decently good early game, but you just started dying a lot. I'm going to be able to show you why you're dying, and a lot of them are actually decision-making mistakes rather than like bad micro in some cases. There is bad micro here and there. But once we get into the video with all the timestamps, I think it'll become a lot more clear why you're dying and what you could have done differently. The first thing I'd like to point out, though, is that you might have been grabbing a snack or a drink or something, but when 15 seconds starts, you need to make it a habit to like get over here and get vision into the jungle. You don't necessarily want to run out here first because people might be waiting for you. Like Rakan might jump out and grab you, or if there's a blitzcrank, they might hook you or something. But in general, once that 15 seconds starts, you need to get into the habit of getting somewhere where you can get some vision. For the most part, early lane phase does go okay, but there's two major things that I definitely have to point out about how you're playing Caitlyn. And the first thing before you even walk up to the lane, really, is that throughout the course of the lane, mostly laning phase, is that your ability usage, as in like your Q and your E, is very poor. You use them very suboptimally for very simple things, for like only getting a few minions, or like barely even getting 1 or 2 minions, when you should be saving these abilities for either like hard pushing with your Q, hitting the whole wave, or poking the enemy, or using your E to poke the enemy, which sets up headshots. I'm going to point out multiple examples where your Qs are just very ineffective and are just basically costing you mana for no value gained. And yeah, it's that first one right there. Go back just a little bit. Okay, the reason why this Q is so bad is because this ability costs you 50 mana, which is 1/6 of your mana pool this early. Granted, an ability usage this early, you're going to regen your mana, so feel free to use one this early. But you only use this for something that you could have just done with auto attacks anyway. So if you are queuing this because you want to hard push, you should be standing here where my cursor's pointed so that you can actually queue all of them. And as Misfortune walks up, you might even clip her with it too. When you make the decision to only kill like 1 minion with your Q and you're shooting at this direction, you're not really gaining anything from that. You could have just shot that minion with an auto attack, not used 50 mana, not used your Q, and that way you could have your Q to poke her potentially. Or if you are going to use your Q like that, just commit to the hard push and throw it into the whole wave. Push the wave as fast as you can. That way you can start getting your zone on with Caitlyn and Sona. Generally, pushing the first 2 waves as Caitlyn and Sona when you are playing Caitlyn is good because you force them onto the back foot of having to farm while you have this range advantage and minion advantage. So you can kind of start going for pot shots with autos and Qs. So with that in mind, we're going to keep going forward. The other thing I wanted to bring up in this matchup, before we keep going further, is that this Rakan has Summoner Spellbook. So unless he's using his summoners effectively, you, because you have Fleet Footwork, and Sona, because she has Airy, have somewhat of the combat advantage in this lane, because you have summoners that are going to help you fight, whereas his only really reduces summoner spell cooldowns. So you should be trying to be a little more aggressive here. I think if you had already hard shoved the wave with Q, you could kind of take an outside position here and be throwing auto attacks at this Rakan, and maybe 1 or 2 at this MF even. Because if you're standing this far away, the minions aren't really going to get stuck to you with minion aggro. It's when you're standing closer to them that they're going to target you. But if you're off to the side here, away from the wave, taking pot shots at them, you're not going to draw minion aggro. And with MF, when you're standing in the minions, she can throw her Q, which is going to go through these minions and bounce and hit you. So that's the other thing, we're separating from the minions when you're playing against MF or maybe other people who have AoE poke and they're just going to dump it on you and the minions. You separate from the minions so that you force them to decide. They're either going to poke you or farm. You don't let them farm and poke you with the same spell and rotation. But most of this lane phase is very farmy, not a lot going on. We're going to fast forward through most of it. In general, what I was mentioning earlier about zoning with Caitlyn, I'm actually going to slow down just a little bit here to where you use that Q and that E. In this particular position, where if Hecarim had started topside right now, he could have been ganking you with red buff. But to focus on the basics and focus on this match in particular, we're going to leave that aside. You would want to be taking a slightly more aggressive footing here. Like, there's another bad Q, right? You did kind of throw it at them, but I'm going to show you how you would throw this one just a little better. You threw another one right there. Actually, we're going to go back, because you're throwing way too many right here. Specifically, the reason why I don't like you throwing this many Qs this early is because you also only have 1 point in it, right? Abilities, when they only have 1 point in them, this is when they're the weakest. This is like across the board for basically all champions, all laning phases in general. If you're using too many abilities, levels 1 through 3, you're spending too much mana, probably on abilities that are only level 1. You want to wait until level 4 and level 5 to start picking up the poke with your main poke ability, because that's when you have 2 and 3 points in it, and the mana you're spending is giving you more damage. So you're being more efficient. With all these Qs that you're using, let's see this next one that you throw here. Okay. This goes back to that first Q that you threw, where you kind of just throw it at some minions. You're not even aiming this towards them, right? This is another time where you're using a Q to do something that you could have just done with auto attacks instead. And it's only a level 1 Q, so you shouldn't be using this like this. You're not using it to poke. You're not really pushing any faster than you would with just auto attacks. You want to get out of the habit of doing something like this, because you also throw another one. Okay, that one was more aimed at them, but the problem is you still don't hit it, and it's still kind of off by a large margin. The better way to start landing more skill shots like this, one, you're standing behind your minions and taking a weird angle. If you were standing just a little more in the middle of the lane, off to the side of these minions against MF, you could take a much straighter, easier to throw angle at them. When you stand off to the side and like kind of throw it crooked, you're forcing them to also like walk crooked if they even want to get hit by it. You need to move a little further up, get a little further into the lane, and take straighter shots at these guys. But in general, you're using too many abilities, just levels 1 through 3. I think that might be a little more obvious now. And then you also use a net just to get that minion. So in the past, I don't know, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you've used 175 mana for basically no gain in laning presence, except for the fact that you just lost a lot of mana. So consider that going forward into some of your laning phases. Ease up on the ability usage early on. But then you kind of go back to the farmy stuff. This is all fine. You are out farming her. Farming gets better over time. Takes practice, so I'm not going to nitpick any of that here. It's better than hers, so that's what's important right now. You just want to focus on doing pretty good. You get into a fight, scrap it out. Still farming. Right, after this wave, looking at your gold right now, this is where I would start to consider backing. Because you know that if you back now, you can get back to lane with a BF sword, and with her gold, she might only be able to buy a serrated dirk. But you could buy like a BF sword in pots, you could buy a BF sword in a control ward. She only can buy a dirk right now, so she wouldn't even be able to come back with pots. When you're in a situation where you're on a BF sword rushing 80 carry, and you get, 1400, 1500, unless you are specifically staying to try to get more, like boots, dagger, call, unless you really, really want more because you think you can get it, when you have the money to get your BF sword and you're running low on mana like this, and you already have this much more farm than the other guy and he's pushed in, you should probably just base. Because what ends up happening a little further from now is that you eventually overstay and die. You need to get out of the habit of basing before overstaying becomes why you get killed. That comes up a little later on in the game. So fast forward, you're continuing to farm, more farm. You dodge that gank, and then you finally decide to base. Sona dies, but you're still alive. And then you buy very reasonable items. Yeah, exactly. You stayed for the boots, you stayed for the dagger. This is all good stuff. It would have been bad if you died, but you end up dying later on. So, like, you did stay for the correct reasons. You bought the correct items. We get ganked here coming up, and I'm going to show you how you would avoid this situation. In general, avoiding ganks takes time and practice and knowing exactly what the other guy's capable of doing, but at this moment right here, hold on a second. Okay, whoops, sorry about that. I had to check something. But getting back through the rest of this. This gank that you died to. We're gonna look at how to prevent this. If we look at the vision, when you went back to lay this ward at 9:59, or when you went to lay this trap at 9:59, you should have been laying the ward. You had one in your inventory. But a thing to consider against Hecarim is that he's so fast, is that sometimes if you lay a ward here, it's not really going to see him in time. So when you're playing against Hecarim or a lot of other junglers, you generally need to take that little extra walk to put the ward a little further up in the bush, up the river. Because that means you get just a little more advanced warning whenever they're coming down the river. So when you take this extra second here to put a trap here, it doesn't need to be a trap here, it needs to be a ward there. And that way you might see this Hecarim coming. But when you know you're pushed up like this, you're kind of just hanging around, right? You're not actually actively farming. You're kind of just hanging up in a dangerous position. So if you had seen him a little sooner, because you don't see him right now, right? And then all of a sudden he's here and it's kind of too late. If you had a ward here, you could have seen him a little sooner and possibly been back here by now. So maybe you still die, maybe you get away, but in general, this gank is avoidable if you have a ward, is the main part here. When you don't have the ward and then he's already here against an engaged support, you're kind of already dead. Back to you. Alright, it's important to note here that this game has become a 4v5. You may not have realized it yet. Sometimes I get stuck in games and I don't really realize it either. But this game has become a 4v5. After you guys get these kills here, Hecarim's going to come down and gank you guys. And if you already know that this is a 4v5, in your mind you know that you just saw Trin top, and I think then he goes mid. But in your mind, since you just killed these two, and Ryze is AFK, he's not here. There he is, or, you know, there he is in base, he's AFK. You know that because you killed bot lane, the only person that could possibly show up is this Hecarim. But your goal needs to be getting this tower. I think you are definitely a little too timid here. You end up dodging the Hecarim himself, but when you net yourself away, you end up creating enough distance where you can't actually help this Yi here. When you initially dodge the Hecarim, I think you probably should try to stay and tough this out. Yi needs your help finishing this turret, and I think if you guys kill this turret a little quicker, and you don't run away with your E and your net, Sona also stays to try to help you kill the turret and potentially kill this Hecarim. Because this Hecarim's the only one here, right? This turret only needed one more auto attack, and I think if you kill it just a little sooner, you guys can actually kill this Hecarim together. Because he's the only one here. You're a little low on mana, and yes, Sona's a little low on mana too, but I think if you just don't back off so quickly and help E kill this turret, you guys can actually turn on the Hecarim and kill him together. Your build path right now here looks good, but you eventually build this into a rapid fire cannon, which is really bad. Generally, you need to build Shiv first, because Shiv combined with your Q on Caitlyn gives you massive wave clear. Your general job on Caitlyn is to push waves, push them under tower, take the tower, go to another lane and take that tower too. Your range basically turns you into like the sieging 80 carry goddess. You don't really need rapid fire cannon to do that because you already have so much range as Caitlyn. Shiv and your Q let you push the waves that let you reach the tower in the first place. So it ups your pressure and it ups how quickly you can farm and push, which gets you to that tower, which gets you to that sieging scenario quicker. Going from here. This is where you start to overstay. This is one of those scenarios again where you're kind of just hanging out rather than actually actively trying to fight and push. The moment you push this, you need to just leave. Because there's nothing left for you here. You're kind of just walking in circles. The moment you push it, you should be already trying to get out. But because you stay and fight, you kind of eventually get collapsed on and killed. So next time when you see this kind of happening, where you push them into the tower here, but you can't really stay and hit the tower because it's too dangerous, you just leave. You should be leaving right now. But you kind of end up walking back in. Just a little bit, yeah. This hesitation where you want to stay but you don't is really bad. You need to just push and get out. And you have enough money to finish your Shiv. You could have just pushed back and then bought your Shiv, and then what I would have done at that point is just start grouping and pushing down other lanes again. You start going bot lane just out of habit, and in a 4v5 scenario like this, you need to be even more willing to leave your lane behind and just go, you know, go mid and push this tower down. Go top with your Sona and the Pantheon and push this tower down, push this tower down. You get into a cycle of just going bot out of habit, which is not good. Caitlyn, your job is to go siege turrets for the team and push waves down with Q and static Shiv. But since you don't have static Shiv here, your ability to push is instantly worse. Like, if you had Shiv already, this wave would be gone. And you could be marching up the lane. Like right now, I think you should be not doing Dragon, but because you just finished Shiv, you should probably be top with your support, potentially even with Syndra and Yi too. You should all just be top lane pushing this down right now. It's 18 minutes into the game, so mid game is definitely here, and once Baron's on the map at 20, you're looking at mid late game already. So it's 18 minutes in the game. You could have had your Shiv, and you basically should be rotating with your team to the lane that still has the most towers in it. And right now that's top lane. These are just towers waiting to be taken by you and the rest of your team. All you gotta do is group up and get in this lane to do it. And then after Dragon, you guys go bot lane again. But this is another overstay. You guys do get this tower, so like this is good. You're getting towers. This is what you're supposed to be doing. But once these minions clear out again, like I don't know what your Yi and Sona are doing. But when you see this, you either need to go in and help them, or you just need to go. You farm and go, or you help them. I say don't help them because what they're doing is very silly, and you should not be dying with them. So what you should be doing is just leaving. But this is where you're playing that middle game again, where you're not really committing and you're not really staying. You're kind of hanging out until you eventually die. So when you see your teammates going for stuff like this, you just need to leave. You just need to not be there anymore. Because you stay, you end up dying with them. Alright, your itemization here is still good, except for the fact that I think in this 4v5 scenario where Ryze is the only one that's basically magic damage, except if you include Rakan, you know that their threats are Tryndamere, Hecarim, and Misfortune. This is where I think you need to be buying Ninja Tabbies. The reason why Ninja Tabbies are super good here is because you have a support who heals you. You know, you have heal. When you have defensive stats, heals and shields are more effective on you because you are tankier. So your shield is protecting somebody who is more durable alone. So I think your next purchase here, if you don't finish IE and have Shiv, then you finish your tab buys because it's going to protect you from the only people who are basically going to be killing you this game. And you end up dying a lot because you do not have tabbies. You're either walking into Misfortune ulti or getting autoed by a Hecarim and Tryndamere. So when those are the only threats that are going to be killing you, you should probably be getting the defensive boots that protect you from them. But going into this, I actually do not have a timestamp for a while here. I think this game kind of just stalls out a little bit. I'm just walking around and farming. I think you should definitely be grouped top pushing with your team though. A lot of farming going on. You guys finally group up and do Baron, which is nice. You go top. Yeah, your decision to start building into another Zeal item here is definitely not good. I wanted to look at how much money you have here when you backed after Baron. Yeah. This would be the part where you finish the Ninja Tab buy. Because I don't think you have enough for IE. I think you're really close, but this is where you just finish Ninja Tab buy and say, hey, we're grouped with Baron. If I have Ninja Tab buy and the extra damage bonuses from Baron buff with my whole team in a 4v5 scenario, we can probably just push an end. But this Zeal that you buy is not good because this sets you up into going another attack speed item second. when really you need to be getting this IE second. You're just getting out of order with your build here. Here's another time where I think you're just getting distracted and not really focusing on what's important, and that's pushing down towers and getting into their base. But more importantly, this is one of the, I think, 3 times in this game where you kind of just walk into MF ulti. When you see that she has damage like this, like 2 lethality items, you can't afford to just approach her in this kind of greedy way. Like, look how much damage you're taking. There's multiple scenarios this game where you kind of just walk at her and get melted by her ultimate. So once you see that you're chasing into her, you need to be like walking off to the side so that you're ready for when she does cast her ultimate. You end up just walking right at her and walking into more of her ultimate when you need to be getting ready to sidestep it. Alright, got a few more timestamps left here. This is another time where MF kills you, but specifically I think what causes this is that once again, you're not really with your team grouped up doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? You're not with your support, and you're not with the rest of your team. You end up going mid alone and putting yourself at risk. Sure, you're taking the tower, but you should be taking the tower with your teammates in front of you. And then you get caught out by the misfortune. You could have fought back here a little sooner, but I think she just got the drop on you with some better items. And she's 2 levels up. So in general, you're losing track of what you're supposed to be doing. Group up with your team, with Baron, stay with your support, and try to siege towers together. Alright, so you go top. This is an important note about playing against a Tryndamere, or in general staying alive as an AD carry with this fight that comes up. You run away, you run away, you run away, and you're out here, right? You got away. The problem here is that Tryndamere isn't vulnerable for 5 seconds, and you're kind of just throwing auto attacks at him while he's invulnerable. You can't kill him while he's in his ultimate, so the fact that you're standing here within range of him throwing auto attacks is really silly. You already got away from him and escaped, and this guy's basically dead. He's surrounded by teammates, and the moment his ult runs out, he's gonna die. So you just shouldn't be this close anymore. The fact that you're still throwing auto attacks at him when he's in his ultimate is kind of silly. You should just be like hanging out back here rather than standing close enough for his spin to reach you, because once you stand too close and his ultimate's still up, he kills you. You need to be more respectful of the fact that he hurts really bad with his straight, you know, armor and damage build, and just be standing further back, because letting him kill you there is really silly. And then he actually kills you again, because you kind of just walk right up to him alone. So you go bottom, and then for some reason here, you kind of decide to walk at this Tryndamere on a solo flank. If you directly compare your items here, I think it's easy to see that he blows you out of the water in a 1v1 scenario. He has armor and more damage than you, and he's 4 levels up. So you cannot just walk at somebody in this kind of situation. You need to be behind your teammates in like a layered formation. You can't just walk at him. You're not maintaining distance or shooting him whatsoever. Big lack of respect there on your part, especially when you look at the item disparity. This is where you need to be, yeah, you need your Shiv already. You need your tab eyes, etc. Your build's really started to stall out. Getting Ginsu's after this is definitely not correct. Shiv, it's not that Runaan's is bad on Kate, but in this situation, you want Shiv and Rapid Fire Cannon. Specifically Shiv first. Keep going forward here. I think we have 3 timestamps left. This, I think, is another bad habit where you kind of just go bot again out of habit. If you look at their base, someone's going to have to come and answer that. And this wave is already pushing itself because you have more minions than them. You realize that you shouldn't be bot here and you eventually go back. But this is, I think, after 20 minutes, after 15, 20 minutes, you need to realize that you shouldn't just be automatically pathing bottom as the AD carry. If you have items and Shiv, you should be trying to group with your team and get things done, like take towers. because that's your real job. I think we have 3 timestamps left, so we're just going to try to get there. We're going to fast forward to 36:25. A lot of farming going on. But now you're all finally grouped up as a team, and you start taking towers. The thing that I want to point out here is that you can afford to be more patient here than you are being, because they have to answer mid. But it's a very long siege. With your rapid fire cannon, this is where you need to be looking to take shots at this tower as it's coming off of cooldown, because that's what rapid fire cannon's good for. But right here, Hecarim's about to engage, and this is a lesson in learning to space out from your teammates. Rakan starts the engage, which sort of sets his team up. But right here, you all start fleeing in the same direction. And what's important to note is that Hecarim hits everybody. When they have a lot of AD carry, or not a lot of AD carry, a lot of AoE and engage, you need to separate from your team so that no matter who gets hit, if you are separated from your team, not as many of you get hit. You also stop and use your ulti here, which is also very bad. Rakan went in, but this is still only the start of the fight, and your ultimate should be saved at the end of fights. So instead of stopping and ulting here, you need to be walking towards this wall and separating from the other 2 squishies on your team. You don't want to let this guy land his engage on all 3 of you, but that's what happens. So in a case like this where a fight got started, you need to be separating from the other squishies so that all this doesn't hit the same guy. Maybe stay closer to your Sona, you know, so that you can catch some heals, but, you know, you could have been a little over here, I believe. But that Hecarim fear actually kills you. So next timestamps are at 42 minutes. Then we got one final one at 44. So we're gonna skip ahead to this. The other thing is that you shouldn't be building 4th item attack speed here. You should be finishing your tab eyes and trying to get another BF sword. It's not necessarily awful, but it's not good either. You need your tank boots. I would even consider some lifesteal here rather than building another attack speed crit item. This is a 4v5 game. Alright, so we need to get to 42 minutes. And freeze. As this fight is starting here, it's important to note that your Syndra is not here. And Master Yi is not really an engaged champion. Neither is Pantheon without his R. So when you see these kind of 3 squishy-ish non-hard engaged champions running into a 4v4, when your Syndra's not here, you need to be really careful about how you approach this. I would even be pinging your team back, because this is not how you're supposed to be fighting this. 1, you don't have Syndra, and 2, you guys kind of all just chase onto the same target, right? And the same way that one fight happened up here, where you guys kind of clumped up, the same thing happens here. You fight outnumbered, and you all clump up on one target, and Hecarim lands a big ulti, and so does MF. So spacing from your team, like you should be over here, right? Or you should maybe even not be here. The same way where I said, like, when you see this dive and you just get the hell out, this might even be one of those times where you just get the hell out and you're not even here anymore. He's alive because he got the hell out. But once you see that this is immediately going downhill because it's a 4v5 or 4v4 and it's not a good engage, you just leave. You don't let them kill you. You just leave. Let the bad stuff happen, but don't let the bad stuff happen to you. Alright, last timestamp is at 44:43. This is where you almost walk back into Misfortune LT again, right? when you have this kind of low HP with like no inherent tankiness in your build. Oh, you actually switched out from the attack speed item. Okay, good. I actually didn't notice that on the first watch. That's good, because you need more AD. You're walking back into the misfortune ulti again. I know you want to fight, I know you want to help your team and kill everybody, but you have to think more about your angles of approach. This is like the third or fourth time this game where you've kind of just walked straight towards this MF and got hurt by your ultimate, and you barely live. You guys end up winning on the next push, but overall, I think if you go back and watch some of this, you'll see with like the 4v5, you should have just grouped up sooner. Not building Shiv and rotating, not building Tabi to preemptively protect yourself against really only AD threats because the AP is AFK. There's a lot of things you could have done better this game. But overall, I really like your farm. I like your safer playstyle in the early game rather than just trying to chimp out and always be aggressive and die. But yeah, I think if you keep farming like this, learn how to use your range better, learn how to separate from your teammates so you don't get hit by things like MF ulti and Hecarim ulti all the time, and learn to build a little like half defensive, like get some tank boots if you have someone who can heal and shield you. Sometimes all you have to do is not die, and because you have all this extra damage, you end up winning the fight. So not dying off of the engage on AD carry and staying alive in order to finish out the fight, in order to push down the tower, in order to push out the inhib, that's really your job. So stay alive at the start of the fight and then kill everybody. But worry about not getting killed first, like pathing into misfortune ultis, or sitting still and using your ulti at the start of a fight, or just not building defensively soon enough. So I think that's going to cover this. For about 35 minutes, I think that's pretty good. I'll try to leave the timestamps in the YouTube video so that you could look back through them at your discretion. But I try to condense this down so that it's not like a whole hour-long video to look through. I already did some of the work beforehand, and hopefully that kind of shortens it for you. So I hope this was helpful, and there you go. Caitlyn coaching session.